The garden was never ours. Double receipts, double succeeds. The proposal came on a quiet Sunday in early spring, though the day itself had the golden softness of early summer. It was warm enough that Seven left her shoes at the back door and walked barefoot across the wooden deck, toes curling slightly on the sun-warmed wood. The garden behind Elio's house was beginning to bloom, every edge of it curated and controlled, hedges trimmed with military precision, flower beds sculpted into neat rectangles, a stone path swept clean of even a single fallen petal. It was beautiful in the way that magazines promised happiness should look. Orderly, glossy, perfect. Seven had always imagined something messier. Dirt under her nails, wild herbs growing between cracks in the stones, bare feet on warm soil. But she didn't mind the difference. This garden was his. And she had been learning, slowly, that part of loving Elio was surrendering to the way he saw the world. He was already outside when she stepped into the yard, standing near the edge of the trimmed lavender rows, his sleeves rolled up, a mug of coffee in one hand. When he turned and saw her, his eyes lit up in that slow, private way they always did, the kind of gaze that made her feel like he was seeing only her, even if the world around them was burning. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You look like something out of a painting," he said, voice low and warm. She gave a soft laugh. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." She walked toward him, the scent of rosemary and cut grass rising with the breeze. He set his mug down on the garden table, then reached into his pocket and turned to face her fully. His hand was already closed around the box. There was no speech, no elaborate metaphor. No grand build-up. He simply held the box out and said, "Stay with me." She looked down, eyes falling on the velvet and the ring within, simple, elegant, a thin platinum band with a single opal. Not traditional, not showy, but radiant, like moonlight caught in stone. It didn't feel like a question. It felt like the moment between one breath and the next. She said yes, not with tears or a shout, but with a whisper. And a quiet nod that felt more sacred than anything she had ever said out loud. Later, when she thought back on that day, she would always remember the way the sunlight dappled the ground, and the way his eyes never left hers, like he was studying her reaction more than the ring, more than the moment. Like he needed to see that she believed it. The wedding came 3 months later. Elio planned most of it, not because she didn't care, but because he cared so deeply. Every detail was exact. The guest list was short. No extended relatives. Only a few professional acquaintances from his work, and the same for her. Neither of them had many friends. Seven hadn't spoken to anyone from her past in years, and Elio, ever private, said his family was scattered and distant. It didn't bother her at the time. It made sense. They were both solitary by nature. 2 islands choosing to build a bridge. The ceremony took place in a glass-walled room on the edge of a mountain estate. Everything was white and silver and soft blush. The weather was perfect, the music soft and mournful in a beautiful way. Elio wore a custom-tailored suit, every thread pristine. Seven wore silk that moved like breath, her veil caught in the light like smoke. People said they looked timeless. Classic. But the moment that stayed with her wasn't the vows or the photos or the champagne. It was a brief second, standing alone in the hallway outside the reception hall, catching her breath while everyone else danced. The light was dim. Her heels had begun to pinch. And she'd caught her reflection in the glass, pale skin, soft eyes, the curve of her lips pulled into something that almost looked like happiness. And then she saw Elio through the reflection, standing with a man she didn't know. His hand was on the man's shoulder, his posture open, relaxed. But there was something about the conversation, the way Elio leaned in, the flicker of something cold behind his eyes, that made her pause. It lasted only a second. He saw her, smiled, and excused himself to come take her hand. Led her back into the celebration. Told her he had missed her. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She had always found ways to doubt happiness. That's what trauma does. It carves tunnels under your trust and makes you test the ground with every step. But Elio had never given her a reason to be afraid. Never once raised his voice. Never once made her feel small. So she buried the flicker of unease and held his hand tightly through the rest of the night. In the months that followed, they built a life that felt enviable from the outside. The house was beautiful, open spaces, warm tones, clean lines. Elio's job brought in more than enough for comfort. Seven worked part-time at a firm downtown while considering starting something of her own. They took long drives on Sundays, bought antique books at local shops, cooked meals in total silence just to enjoy the closeness of it. But slowly, the garden she had once dreamed of remained just that, a dream. The lavender stayed neat, but not hers. The herbs never grew wild. And she never quite felt like she could walk barefoot without first checking the soles of her feet for flaws. Everything in their world gleamed. Their house was admired. Their relationship praised. But perfection, she was learning, had a price. And she was starting to wonder who had paid it.